session, we have a roundup discussion with seasoned investors. And there's a man who hardly needs introduction, Anthony Scaramucci, founder and managing partner of SkyBridge, Vance Spencer, co-founder of Framework Ventures, moderated by Christine Lee, senior anchor at CoinDesk. So please welcome them on stage and enjoy.
Moritz, thank you for joining us for the last session of the day. If you made it this far, congratulations. We can party after, go on the slopes. I'm really excited to be talking with these gentlemen here. It's always a fun conversation. We've got Vance Spencer, Framework Ventures, $1.5 billion in assets under management, and we've got Anthony Scaramucci, gift of the gab. We have $3.5 billion in assets under management as co-founder of SkyBridge. So I want to start off with what everyone's been talking about over the past 24 hours, which is this Bitcoin ETF. Bitcoin almost went over $49,000 earlier today. And price predictions. What was your initial reaction? And what are your thoughts on where it's headed this year?
I think it's been, like 1 or 2 billion that's flown in today. So I would call that like a probably top 3 ETF launch, and it just gives you a proxy of how much demand is out there. And if you've ever bought large amounts of cryptocurrency, like we've done a couple of times, like $200-300 million buys of various cryptos, and what's really obvious to you is that the books are actually very thin. Like 99% of the volume that's transacting, whatever, like the 20, 30, $40 billion a day of volume, is just market makers trading against each other. There's no less of it is just real people actually buying. If you have 25 to 50 billion of inflows, which is what today's annualization would be of the inflows, Bitcoin's going to be multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you have something for ETH, it's going to be similar. There's just not enough coins to go around at a certain point.
Anthony.
I want Vance to keep talking.
Talk to the book. Well, okay. What was interesting was
I love what
actually
Vance is saying. That's why I wanted to keep talking. But
okay.
So, we were the first money into the BlackRock Bitcoin Trust in January of last year. And just to give you a sense for how tenuous all this was, and we were all here last year. Bitcoin was, 17, 18,000. I got train wrecked by Sam Bankman-Fried, and the world seemed pretty grim. But there was a young team at BlackRock that convinced Larry Fink that they wanted to go for a Bitcoin ETF application. And so they came to our office and they said, listen, if we don't get outside money, we're going before a committee next month. If we don't get outside money in this in this trust, we're going to get rejected by the internal bureaucracy of BlackRock. And so my partner, Brett Messing, and I got together. We sent them $10 million to put into the trust. And they went and got the application done. And I'm just going to tell you this because I think you guys know how the U.S. works. BlackRock making an application, they went 530 something to 1 in terms of their successful ETF applications. And they believe that there's $4 to $6 billion worth of demand through now until the end of February. They believe that. And they're seeing that. Now, last point I'll make is that I called JP Morgan. That's Jamie Dimon. JP Morgan crypto is a pet rock. It's a Ponzi scheme.
Not my cup of tea.
Yeah, we should shut it down. If I was the government, we would shut it down. These are direct quotes from Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan. And I asked the private banker there, can I put IBIT, which is the BlackRock shares, in my personal account? And they got back to me and said they're accepting orders on a non-solicited basis. So if you call there and you ask them to buy it for you, they will. I don't think people understand how seismic that is. I don't think people understand the opportunity. Last point, I worked on Wall Street. I guess I'm technically still on Wall Street for 35 years. These products are sold. They're not bought. There will be legions of people all over Wall Street selling these products, FAs, brokers, consultants. There'll be tactical asset allocation portfolio managers instructed by CEOs, put 1 or 2% into a Bitcoin ETF and a $5-6 billion portfolio. BlackRock has a $2 trillion multi-strat. Imagine a 1 or 2% allocation into their IBIT shares, just to give you the magnitude of what's about to happen.
Price prediction for the end of the year for Bitcoin?
So I have been consistently wrong about that. I said at the end of 2021 that it would be 100,000. I actually thought incorrectly that after the Bitcoin futures was approved in November of 2021, I thought for certain, since these things are roughly identical, they would approve the Bitcoin Cash. So I got that wrong. So I'm reluctant to make predictions, but here's what I will say. If it's not through the all-time high by the middle of the year, and
The
not
all-time high is
over
69,000.
69,000, and if it's not over 100,000 by the end of the year, our team, me, will be surprised by that.
Vance?
I mean, I've been doing this for 12, 13 years at this point, just in crypto. That's when I first opened my Coinbase account, was I think 2012. I don't think it's unreasonable that Bitcoin goes to $1 million at some point, ETH goes to 100K. You just don't really witness the burst of an asset class very often. And as I said, these books are extremely thin. Like if you do try to buy $100 million of crypto, you're going to move the price 5 or 10%. And there's just not that many coins that are moving around. Like there's 1.8 million Bitcoin that actually trade. The rest of it is either lost or it's locked up or it's, in somebody's wallet that's not willing to sell it. So yeah, I'm pretty bullish.
Yeah. I'm hearing it. A lot of people were popping champagne, making toasts last night throughout CfC. But, when we were speaking a little earlier, Anthony, you still had a bit of reluctance, in that euphoria about regulatory headwinds.
Well, I'm personally negative on the U.S. crypto regulatory environment because they're doing things that you would not predict. The first thing was what I said. There's a standard in the United States as it relates to administrative law called arbitrary and capricious behavior by the administrator. And so the administrator in this case would be the SEC. And so the DC Circuit ruled in the Grayscale case that Gary Gensler and his team were quote unquote arbitrary and capricious in rejecting the Grayscale Bitcoin application. And so that was done knowing that they were arbitrary and capricious. They're very smart people. Gary went to law school. He took administrative law. And so there's a bug in the system. And I believe the bug in the system is Elizabeth Warren. And to take you back to 2020, Elizabeth Warren basically dropped out of the primary. And she basically cut a deal with the Biden administration to effectively be the president for financial services. And so she picked Janet Yellen, she picked Gary, and she hates this industry in a way that you can't possibly imagine. And her minions are going to do everything they can to block things in this industry. So, maybe the ETH application will go through, the spot ETF application, but maybe it won't. Maybe they'll find a reason to delay it because that's what they've been doing for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Just reflecting on what we've been learning over the past few days from a macro perspective and then the micro perspective, I wonder what you see ahead in terms of your investment approach this year with the election coming on. We've got crisis in the Middle East with Russia, a very speculative U.S. election year with possibly a new president. Both of you actually think there will be a new president elected at the end of the year. How do you hedge in that risky, uncertain environment? Want to start, Vance?
I'm certainly not selling any crypto if I think there's going to be a new president. Like, you have to play for the most likely outcome. So, back Jan 1 of 2023, if you think about election odds, and I'm kind of a politics junkie as well, I just like markets in general. These things trade on markets, the odds that someone might be elected president. So last year, Biden's odds of getting reelected were about 50 cents. They hit about a greater than 50% shot. Trump was about 13 cents. Now Biden is at 28 cents and Trump is at almost 60. So what that's telling you is that the most likely outcome is that Trump is going to be the next president. And if you really drill down, all it comes down to is Michigan. And Michigan, Biden has basically an insurmountable problem with both the Muslim vote and the black vote. And so effectively, you should be buying risk assets this year like Trump is going to be president next year. And what does a Trump presidency look like? We already know. Lower interest rates, more chaos.
Is this vodka in here? I just want to have a
Yeah.
shot of vodka. You just take a shot
Take
of
a
vodka
swig.
while
Take
you're
a swig and
finishing
find
this.
out.
Let me preface this by saying I'm from Canada. You know, I'm a liberal, like whatever, but I'm playing to make money, and I'm playing for the most likely outcome. So it's going to be Trump. You know, if you really think about it, and you know, interest rates are going to be lower, risk assets are going to be higher, and
You think it means deregulation?
it means deregulation. And to get back to the point about Elizabeth Warren and all the stuff that she may or may not do, you know, she's had a Democratic president, she's had a Democratic Senate, she's had a Democratic House, and she couldn't get it done. She couldn't regulate the industry, she couldn't pass any bills, she couldn't kill basically everyone in the industry. So she's basically had her best shot. And now I think the burden of proof is that she's not going to be able to do anything, and that the industry is going to be deregulated. And what does a deregulated crypto industry look like? It probably looks pretty nuts. And I hope there's no blowups and there's no, you know, security issues or things like that. But the prices of these coins are going to be higher. It just is what it is. If I thought it was going to be Biden next year, I'd be more bearish. But that's just not the most likely outcome.
All right, but I'll interject here and say, you know, Trump is not a fan of Bitcoin. He said, you know, he doesn't like
Hold
it.
up. He sold 3 NFT collections this year.
Okay, that's true.
3 NFT collections. One of which I am the top holder of now.
Do you own a piece of this
you have to
suit?
tell them what it is.
So these were called, the most recent of the 3 was the Trump mugshot collection. So it's the collection around that mugshot that he took, and what do you get by buying 47 of these? 47 is the magic number that he wanted you to buy. You get obviously these beautiful digital cards of him like in a generative AI, like looking very jacked or wearing like a tank top. You also get a physical piece of his suit. They cut out a piece of the suit and they send it to you. And
does it smell like him?
I will tell you what it smells like when it comes.
That'd be a deal breaker for me if it actually smelled like him.
Yeah, it might bring back some memories. And then the last one is I get to go have dinner, you know, with him. Who knows?
In Mar-a-Lago,
It is
no less.
allegedly I go have dinner with him. And you know, I've checked. There's only 2 other people who've bought 47, so it might be a 4-person dinner. Apparently, Melania is coming as well, so maybe 5. But sure, he might hate crypto.
He likes NFTs, but again, he said that he doesn't like Bitcoin. And,
he doesn't like Bitcoin, but that's true.
Anthony, you have personal experience with Trump as his communications director for 11 days.
Well, don't forget, I worked on the campaign for a year.
Yes,
So I
that's
did
true.
71 campaign stops with him. There was a line that he used once on the campaign plane that he has written more books than he read. Now, you know that's true. You know that's true because he had a great ghostwriter writing the books for him. And he used to say that openly. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's apropos to this. He has no idea what an NFT is. Someone went to him and said, we can sell these to the cult. I'm not saying you're in the cult. I just think you have an interesting way of looking at the world, which is why this is a great panel. But I will say this to you. He has no idea what it is, same way he's never written or read a book. But it's made him money. And
He knows what money
I
is.
will tell you that he will change his tune on crypto. Moreover, he is a political weather vane. And so when they show him that there are 52 million wallets in the United States, that more people own crypto in the United States that have been to an NFL game or own an electric vehicle or a member of a union, he will change his tune on crypto. And he'll be faster to change his tune than the Democrats. So I do believe, Vance, that he is going to end up being pro-crypto, and the regulatory environment, if he wins, will be way better.
But you don't think he'll win?
But let me just paint a contrarian view to the thing. He may win. I don't know the answer to that. But I do know something about the Department of Justice. I got an 11-day PhD in Washington scumbaggery. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what they're doing. Okay, they're cornering him. And they've got 4 big indictments, 91 counts, and they're coming for him. And I want to remind everybody in the room that the insurrection case has his chief of staff as the chief witness. So when the Klan and the cult is saying, well, it's all liberals that are trying to block him from getting to the presidency, Mark Meadows, who is the head of the Freedom Caucus, the most conservative wing of the House, Republican part of the House, is the key witness for the prosecution. So I have seen this movie before. Al Capone, untouchable, no one will lay a hand on him. They didn't get him for murder, which he did prolifically. They didn't get him for bootlegging, but they got him for tax evasion. The Teflon Don, I grew up with his kids out on Long Island. That's John Gotti. He was called the Teflon Don. No one's going to lay a glove on him. He died in prison. They are coming for Trump. They have him in the crosshairs. He is the Al Capone of American politics. Now, if he escapes to the Department of Justice, and I'm saying there's a chance that he will, I think Vance is going to be right. I think he goes on to be the president, and God help everybody in this room.
Okay.
Because he will go after his adversaries, and he will be like a...
Do you think you're on his list?
Oh, I don't give a shit if I am one way or the other. But he will be an orange wrecking ball to the institutions of the United States. Okay, and one of the things you may like or dislike about the United States is a very flat, decentralized government, and there's a tremendous amount of checks and balances in the system. One of the funniest days for me in the White House, and it happened on a Wednesday, I know because I was only there for one Wednesday. That's how I know it was a Wednesday. He had Paul Ryan in the Oval Office, and he was telling Paul Ryan, who at that time was the Speaker of the House, you work for me. He was dropping F-bombs as well. You work for me. And Ryan looked at him and said, I actually don't work for you. I'm in a totally separate article in the Constitution. And Trump didn't understand that. Okay, he didn't get it. He looked at me. He doesn't work for me? I said, actually, no, he doesn't work for you. Okay, you can ask Paul Ryan when you run into him if that actually happened. He'll say that it did. And I'm just telling you, he will do things to the United States that you won't like. Okay, I'm just telling you, he is crazy. And he should not be president again. And if I'm choosing between dementia and demented, I'm going with dementia. Okay? If I'm choosing between invalid, if I'm choosing between invalid and insanity, I'm going with invalid. Okay? Because invalid and dementia are going to be way more harmless than demented and insanity. Okay, I'm done. You can have the rest of the whole thing. The whole rest of the conversation.
All right. I was going to say, how do you invest in that environment? But maybe we can tie it in with the next.
You already know how to invest in that environment. We've seen it before. You buy risk assets.
Yeah. Okay. So Anthony, you're into L1.
I think Vance is 100% right. You have to understand something. Trump's style works in the beginning. The trains ran on time in Italy. Okay, it doesn't work at the end. You get really good business dynamics in the beginning, and then people turn on each other at the end because you are slaves to the law and the legal system in order to be free. The reason why Bitcoin is going to flourish is people don't like and they don't trust each other. So it's decentralized, a result of which you can trust the system. The law enables you to have a contract with each other that you know is going to be upheld by the institution of the legal system. You get Trump in there, and he starts to make the legal system unpredictable in the United States. That is an unmitigated disaster for the country. And if you don't believe me, start studying countries where the legal system is unpredictable.
Let's talk about trust because, we'll get into your different investment approaches on that. And I want to use FTX as an example, even though we're moving up beyond SPF.
FTX, more vodka, more vodka.
Here we go. All right, Anthony, you invested in FTX, and a big reason for that is you're a relationships guy. You're a friend to sovereign wealth funds, pension funds. You're the gateway on Wall Street to alternative investments. They go to you for Bitcoin. You invest in Solana, ETH, as well as Algorand. And you meet FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, and you get a good feel from him. You get a good vibe from him. You said you liked him. He was this geeky guy. You met his parents. you had a good relationship with him, and I get a sense that that's how you approach investment. But does the experience with FTX, the collapse, and the what was revealed in his criminal trial, does that make you recalibrate your relationships and how you due diligence these deals?
Well, we got so many things wrong in that transaction, and so I certainly missized him as a personality. When I met his parents, I mean, one of the worst things that happened was I did a charity event with his 84-year-old aunt. So it was Joe Bankman's sister, and we were at the FTX Center in Miami, and it was Kevin O'Leary and I, Senator Cory Booker. We were a Shark Tank mock judge for a group of indigent high schoolers in Miami. And the FTX Foundation had given $10 million to scholarships for these high schoolers. And so the 84-year-old aunt could not have been a nicer person. Okay, the two parents that were there were tenured Stanford law professors. One of them was studying or teaching about legal compliance, particularly as it related to the SEC. And so did I get smitten by that? Yes, I did. When I left that event, and I think one of my colleagues is in the audience here, I looked at him, I said, these are really good people. This guy's a little bit of a geek. He's a little disassociated in terms of the way he thinks and talks to people, but he's well-intended. And so I genuinely liked him. I'm not somebody that revises history and pretends otherwise. But we did a tremendous amount of due diligence, not just in terms of talking to other VCs and sovereign wealth funds that we're close to and people. We were in his data room. And if you're asking people that were in that data room, they'll tell you that it was pristine. If you're asking people that made the investment in terms of the things that they were looking for, in terms of the quality and the nature of the market share and the business, it did look legitimate to me. And so I got it wrong.
What are the lessons then?
But I'm going to say two things. Number one, a good fraud can fool very smart people. I got it wrong. I've been out publicly admitting that. There were 25 other large investors, venture capitalists, et cetera, got it wrong alongside of us. But the lesson is the locus of the money in a financial services company has to be tracked very carefully. If you give money to SkyBridge, we have 50 people looking after your money. We have outside outside auditors. We have outside vendors. We have an internal control team, and then we have our legal team looking after the thing. If you have 40 or 50 people looking at something, there'll always be a person of conscience that steps up and says, hey, I'm sorry, this doesn't work for me. Sam isolated it down to 2 or 3 people, all of which pled guilty, which is the reason why it was 100% he was going down. And they isolated it, and they kept the other staff away from it. I didn't ask that question. You have to ask that question the next time you're doing a financial services deal. Who's got the money? Who's in control of the money? And it better be 30 or 40 people that do it. By the way, Bernie Madoff did the same thing. It was 2 or 3 people in a room that controlled the fraud, and he was able to keep that fraud going for 30 years. So this was a very, very painful thing for me, and I made a lot of mistakes doing this, but I'm willing to talk about it because there might be somebody in this room that hears what I'm saying, and they won't make that mistake, and they won't go through the pain that we went through at SkyBridge.
By contrast, Vance, you're crypto native. You saw Sam Bankman-Fried's rise from 2018 on, and you always had a bit of a reluctance. You thought it was sketchy, and you never thought anything.
I wish I had met Vance before made the investment.
You never thought his rise made any sense. So I guess what were the lessons in your view? Why did you feel the way you did in avoiding FTX?
I think the main one was source of funds. So his backstory allegedly was that he did the kimchi arb from Japan to the US and made a bunch of money. Kimchi is not from Japan. So that was like the first red flag. But crypto is prone to this, where you don't really have like companies that go public. You just have people that kind of come out of the woodwork and say, I'm an OG Bitcoiner or an OG ETH guy. So it's hard to kind of audit people, but I don't really trust most people that walk through the door, and so immediately my guard was up.
And so does this come from why you invest in decentralized finance a lot of the time? The trustlessness?
Yeah, I invest in the
nature?
cyberpunk stuff. I'm here for the sci-fi stuff. Like, that's the stuff that I want to invest in. But this happens a lot. Like, truthfully, I've already forgotten about SBF and FTX. And, you know, for all the wrongs that he did, I don't think he deserves to go to jail for 100 years. I also think we should be pardoning Ross Ulbricht, who ran the Silk Road once upon a time. But that's kind of a different issue. I think if the money is there and, you know, people are made whole, which it generally seems like they will, I don't think he should be serving, you know, life in prison. And certainly not people going after his parents or things like that. But, you know, that's the other side of kind of the cypherpunk angle, where it's like, if the money's there, sure, a crime has been committed and the government needs to sort that out, but there should be some sort of leniency shown to him.
Do you think there was a lot of groupthink, and, you know, is that something you actively try to avoid with all the VCs investing in the golden boy?
There's so many mistakes made over the past 4 years that, like, you know, it's hard to point the finger at any specific VCs. I think it was more of, frankly, like a media circus. Everyone loves a good wonder kid. Everyone loves to see, you know, the weird guy with the weird hair who sleeps on the beanbag and, you know, wants to donate his money to like some vegan charity. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, it's just a bad investment.
So let's move on to investment strategy. During the bear market, where were you planting seeds?
So can I just say one thing about this? I applaud Vance's generosity in thinking about the sentencing. The one problem I have is when they mark the bankruptcy assets. So let's say you were an account holder at FTX and you own 2 Bitcoin. They mark those Bitcoin at the price that the bankruptcy was declared. And so again, don't quote me on this, but it was probably 17, 18, or 19,000. Those coins have now gone up to 44,000, but they dollarize the bankruptcy. So you're only entitled to the $34,000 that was there. So your money was frozen because of Sam's fraud, and if that was your money, you missed the uptick in the bear market. So he does deserve a penalty for that. I agree that he shouldn't go to jail for life and things like that, and people will get a lot of their money back. But he does have to pay a price for what he did, because remember, it's not just what you're doing to Sam Bankman-Fried, you're setting a deterrence for other fraudsters in terms of the sentencing. So as it relates, and I'll just say quickly, as it relates to what we did strategically, we did nothing. We did nothing strategically. I left this conference last year defeated, demoralized, and my fund was down, I think 39%. I think there were 2 financial obituaries written about me and SkyBridge, one of which was in Bloomberg magazine. And we did nothing. And so by doing nothing, I think our core fund went up 40. I think our coin fund, the one that we're writing about, went up 160. And I think sometimes in life, doing nothing is the right strategy. And so I did absolutely nothing.
Vance, where were you planting seeds during the bear market?
Yeah, I mean, we were buying ETH under 1,000. We were buying Bitcoin under 20K. We were basically buying all the liquid assets that we thought would come back. And the thesis was that it was so bad that it was good. And crypto's weird. Like, there's no CTAs. There's no, you know, big institutional funds that are supposed to buy when things are bad. And so there's really only a few people who are able to do kind of what we did. And I think if we total up all the numbers from all the funds, we put about $500 million into the market, you know, pretty much at the lows. So it's been a good year.
And I also want to mention with Anthony, you didn't do nothing. You still made some investments. You announced that you had invested in Brett Harrison, the former FTX president. You also mentioned you might have an announcement today.
Yeah, we haven't been able to sign the deal yet, but we are. When I say we're doing nothing, we didn't change our investment discipline. We did buy more of things like Algorand. We bought more of Solana. We bought some ETH, and we bought Bitcoin. But we didn't change our investment plan, or we didn't deviate from what we were doing. We made an investment in Brett Harrison's company because Brett was being tarred and feathered with FTX. He did absolutely nothing wrong, and he was completely exonerated by the Department of Justice. And let me tell you something about life, because you mentioned relationships. You run towards your friends when they're in trouble. If the bombs are going off and you're running away from your friends, it says a lot about you. And Brett was trying to raise money and restart his career, and people were tar and feathering him with Sam's crime. And so I thought it was very important for us as a group to step up and help him get that fundraising started. And that business is doing quite well.
Mm-hmm. You also overlap in that you guys are bullish in the gaming world. So are you moving beyond layer ones and onto apps, into gaming and such? Where do you see
You want to go
the
first?
blockchain
Yeah, I
being
mean,
headed?
games is the thing that we deploy most of the venture dollars into. And I think, if I were to describe our strategy, it would be threefold. The first one is we buy profitable DeFi. So something like Maker, which is doing $250 million of revenue a year, $100 million of earnings, and buying back its own token with that $100 million of earnings. Until recently, that was trading at $1 billion. Like, if that was a private Silicon Valley startup, people would be fighting over each other to get a piece of it. But because it's in crypto, it's largely ignored. And so again, that's like our opportunity. The second one is just the liquid assets that were beaten down. And frankly, like the time to do that, if you're like a crypto native, was in 2022. But then the third one is gaming. And gaming is important because it's our clearest and best shot to get 100 million people onto a blockchain. And if you can pull 100 million people onto a blockchain, you're instantly the blockchain with the most users. And so that is the thing that has the potential to shift the ground underneath everyone in this industry and kind of terraform the way everything works and the power rankings and so on and so forth. So those are our three categories, and we put more venture dollars into gaming than anything else. Gaming takes a long time. It's very expensive. It's getting less so. But we invested in most of the games about 2 years ago, and they take about 2 years to build. And so we're going to find out if we're right pretty soon here, in this year. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Anthony, you're also into gaming. You mentioned that to me in a previous interview that you invest in Vulcan Forge, ticker PYR. Where do you see the blockchain industry headed, and where's your vision?
Well, yeah, I watch the behavior of my kids. Even my adult kids are into gaming, and I do think that there's going to be an intersection between what's going on in the Web 2 gaming, where the graphics are amazing. I think the Web 3 gaming, I think we would probably agree, they're less than amazing, but they're on their way to amazing. And if you can create this sort of utility token inside those games, and you capture, like Vulcan Forge has, they have over 200,000 users playing their games. So over time, I think those utility tokens will become very valuable. And I think eventually you'll see things like Take-Two Entertainment or Activision, which is now Microsoft Activision. You'll start having the earn to play, or whatever the right acronym is for that, the right phrase or saying.
Reflecting back on these past 2 days at CfC, there was a lot of talk on AI. Is there anything that piqued your interest that you guys are particularly interested in going forward in Web3?
So, I mean, something like Maker, which is a series of smart contracts that's generating, $250 million of revenue, $100 million of earnings. Like, this is a stablecoin protocol. There's not much human intervention that's needed. I think one of the coolest things that you can do is actually turn the governance of that over to AI and just say humans are no longer needed, just like profit seek, goal seek, let it run on its own. And if you think about like both like dystopian and utopian outcomes that UI could happen, like, I don't really care if like my chat GPT instance becomes sentient. It's like not going anywhere. It doesn't have any money. But if you give a DAO that has like a profitable business and a lot of money and a lot of earnings, an AI governance system, like a whole range of interesting things could happen, both good and bad. And so I generally think like the most interesting use cases of AI will happen on blockchains, just across gaming, DeFi, kind of whatever it is. As long as you turn over the governance to AI, it's interesting.
All right, and gentlemen, we have about 90 seconds left, so we're going to wrap it up, tie it with a bow. Taking a look at the rest, this year, what are your final thoughts? What's your vision? What will be your focus area?
So we're sort of going to continue to do what we're doing. We're going to make some investments in some protocols. We're going to continue to grow the businesses that we have. We have a small fund where we're buying into late stage pre-IPO businesses, some of which lost a lot of value in 01 that have had a little bit of a recovery, 21, and have had a little recovery in 22. And then the last thing for us is we're going to push as hard as we can the Bitcoin agenda, because I do believe that by educating people, the more Bitcoin that's bought, it's sort of the rising tide that will lift the other boats in the system.
Mm-hmm. Vance, final thoughts? And you mentioned DAO governance. You've also been interested in tokenization of real-world assets like bonds and stocks. So that's been talked about for a while, over the past couple of years. What is different now in this cycle that will be the game changer compared to previous years?
When interest rates are zero, the first thing that people tokenize is like apartment buildings and like condos. And frankly, like, there's no demand for that anywhere. Like, no one wants to buy a tokenized Aspen condo. When interest rates are 5.5%, you have the most liquid, highest yielding, most safe asset in the world that you can bring on chain and replace the $120 billion of stablecoins that exist today. And so I think the real world asset thesis is simple. Like, 5% times 120 billion, which is the stablecoin supply. That's $6 billion of revenue that's being left on the table. So that's easy. And that's going to be a huge trend. And Maple and Maker and all the protocols that are leading the charge are going to be huge beneficiaries.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Make my job easy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to
Wow,
the
that was
CfC team.
fantastic. Thank you so much.